Hey guys, still here. Welcome back to Ashen Shadows, the wargame mod that turns everything upside down. Well, upside down. I mean, it turns it into 2015-2016 era units, and for some reason there are people who watch these videos and somehow completely miss the intro. I don't really get how that works, but every now and then I still have people on these videos commenting, how do you get these new units? How do you get this specific nation? Seriously, I put these things in the description, I put them in the title, I mention them in the video. I'm not sure how much more I can do to get the message across. Anyway, with that frustration bit out of the way, let's have a look at this replay. We're looking at Kekfest versus Rip Tater Chip. Now, Kekfest in this gameplay is using the USSR deck, and the USSR deck has some very interesting infantry nowadays. They have the machine gun squad, which is a 15-man machine gun squad. So they don't actually carry an anti-tank weapon, but that machine gun is a heavy machine gun, an HMG, which is something that is usually not carried by infantry. And most of the time, the heavy tag on the infantry that this mod gives makes it very difficult for your infantry to quickly dispose of enemy infantry. There's just too much damage reduction in play. However, those HMGs, those cords, they do a lot of damage. And they seem to be able to penetrate quite a bit of that armor tag, or that heavy tag that most of these units have. So let's see how effective those things can be. Now he's starting out with a couple of K-17 boomerangs. Again, don't mind the unit models. No, they cannot be changed. Maybe eventually when Eugen decides to give up their models or their model editing software, but I really don't think so. So the K-17 Boomerang uses, I believe, the model of the BTR-90. It is definitely not just a BTR-90, as this thing also has a pretty heavy ATGM. A couple of KA-92s with infantry inside, and his main infantry group is going to be coming in from the left flank. We have a couple of BTR-80s, some Bulats, and a couple of Scrajets. And what's inside here? Well, your bet's as good as mine. I'm seeing some standard infantry, or what could be an ATGM team, but then again, most of these slots have been completely overwritten, and you really cannot base what you see in those vehicles on what is actually in the vehicles, if that makes any sense. Anyway, we're on Wonsan Harbor, as you probably already spotted. It's the non-naval variant, which means that you don't really have to worry about this flank too much, with the exception of the occasional helo rush. Now, if that happens, then you better make sure you have some AA in place, or it could be a very short match for you. And these two zones, Cheriton and what's this, Anna, they are the only two zones where you can bring in reinforcements. So if you lose this one, well, you're pretty much GG at that point. Anyway, helos darting out ahead. These things are pretty fast at 540 kph. I believe that this is the fastest helo in the game. I don't really think that they got up to that speed though. I mean, the helos, sure, they're fast, but their vehicles are not lagging behind too far. So this 540 kph speed on the K92, I don't think we're actually seeing it. What we are seeing is a bunch of blue 4 units coming in, a couple of Fuchs Milans. I'm not exactly sure what deck he was playing. We're just going to have to make that out as we move up. Anyway, the infantry rushing into the town. The Bulats not too heavily armed. These guys don't carry anything, so the firepower is going to be provided by the BTR-80s, the infantry, and potentially those boomerangs. Now, we already have a Rafale engaging and killing one of the Ka-92s. The other Ka-92s have been stunned a bit, but the infantry fortunately is fine. Now, there we go. The Misha Strumovier. I'm probably butchering that, but here we are. These guys have a 30-man squad. Sorry, 15-man squad, so 13 between the two of them. As well as that Cord machine gun. Now, normally an HE machine gun, or the machine gun, does 0.5 HE. This thing does 0.75. And that definitely makes a difference when you're dealing with enemy infantry. Now they're running right into what seems to be a combined Eurocorps offensive. Fallschirmjäger with the heavy tag, two of those groups, VAP 2013s as well as Legionnaire Pioneers. These guys come with the Erics. Fortunately, this Erics cannot fire at ground forces other than vehicles, but you have some of these Erics which can also be used against ground targets such as infantry, in which case you're usually going to see your infantry go down a whole lot faster than you might want to be seeing. Now so far, Sturmovia doing a good amount of damage, but in the meanwhile they're also taking a little bit of bombing runs here. But look at that, these guys took a bombing run pretty much squarely on the building where they were in, and survived. Sure, there's not too much of them left, but they survived. And for a 20-man squad, you just bring in a resupply and you can get them back up. That is, if they survive this engagement with 30 Commando Marines. And there goes one, and there goes the other. We do, however, have Spetsnaz GRU. No standard Spetsnaz, surprisingly. That's what I would really like to bring in a situation like this. Because Spetsnaz heavy against a whole lot of Commando Marines, that's going to be pretty tricky. Now we're doing a little bit of a bombing run here. Commando Marine took pretty much half a squad out. And the Cornets, well, it's an ATGM squad without the capability of engaging ground targets other than vehicles. So they're pretty easy pickings for the Commando Marines. At this point, Kekfest is already 350 points behind Blue 4. Reptatorship definitely got most of the kills in this situation. Now we still have a little bit of a flanking force here, or a defense force, this Murskaya Pekotas, as well as a bunch of new units which are being brought in, but they're just there to resupply whatever was sent into the town, not so much to reinforce it. So he's going to have to make best use of the units in here. And there's really not too many of those left. Until those Commando Marines jump out to the next building, the BTR-80 doesn't have any good line of sight either. And, let's see, where are those vehicles? They die. Yeah, I think they died. Those, BTR-90-like vehicles that I was telling you about earlier. 24 Commando Marines versus 8 Spetsnaz. And there's another 11 Commando Marines which are already punishing the AA infantry. Not looking good for Red 4. Not looking good at all. So he's slowly falling back. And really the only thing that can damage the Commando Marines at this point is the Spetsnaz GRU and the Skrajets. And this BTR-80, that's about it. The Bulats, maybe they're useful for target practice, but very little else. The Verba can deal with enemy aircraft and helos, but I would not put them up against Commando Marines. And the Spetsnaz, while they are delaying, really do not have the sustainability against a very heavily armed and quite aggressive group of Commando Marines. So, middle of the town, secure by Blue 4. Interestingly, none of the zones have been captured. Nobody decided to send a CV into Greg or Fedor or Dmitry at that. Even Elena is still open. And this is not a conquest match, this is a destruction match. So a zone like this, Dmitry or Elena, is really going to help your income, which in turn allows you to push up further. So I'm not exactly sure why they haven't captured anything yet. Potentially they were just trying to invest as much as possible into new units. We do, however, have one Volk GU coming in, so it looks like center is going to be his pretty early on, unless the CV veers off at some point. And I would personally park it down here. I'd take Dmitry over center. Anyway, Commando Marines rushing forward, killing off anything in their path. Surprisingly, they haven't found these Misha yet, but they are about to find something else. And hopefully the infantry here, nope, cannot get out before they get killed off by the Commando Marines there. Well, actually, yeah, some survivors here, but very, very little. One guy survived and gets killed off. Another group of Murskaya Pekota come in with a Cord and an AK-12, doing a pretty respectable deal of damage, or amount of damage to these guys. And the Murskaya Pekota on the right flank are now also pushing in, trying to surround these Commando Marines, as well as potentially take out some transports here. Because these VAP 2013s are way too close to the buildings and are easy pickings. Unfortunately, the town is not entirely devoid of enemy infantry, and we have another Commander Marine squad and Fallschirmjägers coming in. The Fallschirmjägers look like they've really taken quite the beating. And interestingly, this VAB, even one right next door, there we go, we're not quite able to do any damage. But they're very, very quickly to fall back against 30 Commander Marines. Aircraft flies in, Tornado ECR, okay. Interesting. Splash, one Tornado ECR, long range shot by the Buck. 9.1 clicks against airplanes, and he has 2 of those over here. With 2 of those positioned either here or here, you can cover absolutely everything on this map. The map's not that big, and with AA specs at 9.1 clicks, you can get a very long range kill. As well as, with very few AA units, cover most of the map. Normally I'd say have some AA there, maybe here, and then there. But this situation, this is enough. Although, what I've been hearing is that there is a aircraft rework already in progress. I'm still running version 2.40.4, I think. And I'm soon going to be running the next one, when Spectre gives me the OK for the additional unit changes. And of course I'll be doing another specific video on that. Anyway, at the moment we still have Kekfest almost 400 points behind Reptatorship. Fortunately, most of the infantry here seems to have been killed off, and due to him not actually capturing any zones aside from Gregory, he's not really able to get a lot of income. Whereas Kekfest has captured Boris as well as Center. Now, I'm gonna stick to my guns and say you could have done the same amount of income, so +2/+2 with just 1 CV and Dimitri, but that's easy talk after the match. But due to the infantry from Blue 4 being so expensive, they cannot field too many more units, simply because they don't have the income, or they haven't had the income in the past couple of minutes. This is good news for Red 4, as Red 4 can now start to push up. You gotta make sure that you have a combination of Morskaya Pekota and these Mishas, because the Misha cannot really do that much damage against enemy transports. Especially with the transports usually having quite a lot of armor. There's not that much that .75 HE is going to really do to them. But this is where they do really well, providing a lot of fire support and suppression damage against the enemy infantry. And yes, there's still one of them left. One group of 9 guys, but look at how quickly these guys fall to the Stormovia. These guys don't really stand a chance. And in the meanwhile, the Morskayas are free to move up, engage enemy vehicles as they see fit, and they are having a good day picking off these transports one by one. Look at that. Yes, they took some losses doing it, but, well, these guys definitely made more than they were originally paid for. Still, keep in mind, this is a 30-point infantry squad. You're paying as much for these Morskaya as you would be for one group of Commander Marines, which, come to think of it, might not be entirely fair. Because a Commando Marine group is a 15-man squad, which is elite trained. These guys have shock training. Maybe it's offset by the use of that cord machine gun, the HMG that they carry. Not really sure. You be the judge of that. Let me know in the comments. Do you think that these guys should be cheaper, these Morskaya Pekota, or do you think that it's alright, the price tag that they have right now? Anyway, bit of a lull in the fighting, but between the kills on the Commander Marines as well as the enemy vehicles, Kekfest suddenly has a whole lot more points. And where the point difference was almost 400 points about 2 to 3 minutes ago, right now we're only looking at a difference of 120. Much, much better. Unfortunately, here is that flanking helo that I, well, sort of teased at the start. Fortunately, the Ka-52 was able to take it out, but not before taking a missile all by itself, and, well, fortunately, clipping trees doesn't do damage to helos, or aircraft for that matter. I've seen my fair share of helicopters and aircraft fly right through hilltops and mountains and shit. But apparently, one helo is enough to at least deal with these guys. Well, sort of. This thing is still panicked from that missile that they took from, I think it was a Tiger helicopter there. And unfortunately they're almost out of missiles, but the Mi-24 with just the standard Yak-B can still do a respectable amount of damage to an NH-90. However, at the moment it's not dead yet. So there's still a threat to this command to this command vehicle, and that one. So immediately he deploys a couple more boomerangs to hunt down this helo. And the question is, what came out of this helo? Because this NH-90 has a lot of training. So he got that elite level of veterancy from something. And potentially, and most likely, the infantry that came out of it. If you let those guys move around unimpeded, it's going to be pretty difficult to catch them in these woods. So these two helos caused a lot of mayhem. Because you're having to devote a lot of new attention to this area, as opposed to what you probably want to be facing, the front line here, where more German and French infantry have arrived and are getting friendly bombed. And it looks like the Misha, well, if they're lucky, they might survive, but not out in the open. Morskaya Pekota falling back. These two wounded squads, I think, were the ones that took out all the transports. It's time to retreat these and keep these guys on the front line. Hopefully, putting so much fire on the Commander Marines that they go down, but there's already a new squad of 30 guys. And the one unit type that I'm missing really is mortars. Why would you not use mortars? Because I would definitely want to have these guys panicked most of the time. And sure, they have the heavy tag. They take less damage from HE. But they still take damage. Oh, this is going to hurt. They still take damage from HE, especially from mortars. So I would definitely be using mortars here to try and suppress them. Or put up smoke screens around my infantry so that they do not really know where they are. And hopefully reduce the amount of bombings that are coming in. Because there's definitely a fair share of these aircraft dropping heavy munitions onto the Morskaya Pekota and the Stormovier. Meanwhile, on the left flank, we have a couple of boomerangs pushing forward. These guys are armed with the the 2A72 M3, a very accurate autocannon with quite a punch at 4 AP. So these things can definitely take out a helicopter all by themselves, and against vehicles, they also have the Shershin P2B, very accurate ATGM. You could say it's a bit wasted on these transports, but hey, the transports themselves are also firing back. Fortunately, they didn't took out a boomerang, they took out a Bulat over there. I wonder if these guys are going to be firing back. Nope, they're getting fired at by the Panther over there. Now, the Panther has a better ground range than these guys have an anti-air range. 1750 versus 2100. So if this Panther just drops a couple of those rocket pods and then bugs the hell off, he has a pretty good chance of surviving. If he fires those rocket pods and does not manage to kill either the boomerangs, then the boomerang will probably come back with a vengeance, as boomerangs tend to do. At the moment though, he's just readying a couple of infantry units, and surprisingly, Blue 4 has not made any sort of advance into this area yet. Not exactly sure why, but he seems heavily focused on this particular block of buildings. There is more to Wonsan Harbor than these buildings. And apparently he's trying out some new infantry here. We have the Gebirgsjäger. These are, in case you're not familiar with them, a shock-trained infantry squad with a heavy tag, as you can see, which come with the assault rifle, machine gun, and AA. So no longer just a 5 or 3-man AA team, but a 10-man shock-trained AA team, which can heavily bite back. What they do not do very well is deal with enemy transports or other sort of vehicles, because the Stinger Block 2 will deal with helos, but very little else. A situation like this, I'd say try to get your Scrashets off to the side and put more pressure onto them. Anyway, right flank. We have one T-64 BM2 moving up. Pretty heavy tank here, 85 pointer, 4 HE, Nice fire supporter for the infantry, if you can get a line of sight. And trying to get shots through these buildings, especially all of these little structures here, usually proves to be quite difficult. Although from a position like there, you probably could get a couple of rounds off on this Gebirgsjäger and make life a little bit easier on your own infantry here. Now, Riptator Chip, despite, there's another HE bomb, despite his heavy focus on this area, still has more points than Kekfest. Although at this point, it's only 35 points. So that 400 point lead is nowhere to be found anymore. And at this point, we have a Gebirgsjäger firing an MG3, which does 0.5 HE, versus the Morskaya Pekota firing the Cord, dealing 0.75 HE. Accuracy, 25%. Accuracy, 30%. So while these guys might be a little bit more accurate, I think that these guys are going to be doing a lot more damage to the Gebirgsjäger, if they have ammo. These carry 1800 rounds for that MG3. These only 700 rounds. So with that amount of ammunition, yes, you're going to do quite a bit of damage, but you really do not fire these things for a sustained period of time. They have a sustained rate of fire of 428 rounds a minute. So in about 90 seconds, you're going to be through all of your ammo. I'm not sure what the MG3 stat is. How much damage or how much time these guys can put up their fire. Now, I think, considering that I haven't really been paying attention to this, that most of the units that were over there are dead, or at least I should hope so. Interestingly, at this point, he goes for a Rafale. I think he had this thing in reserve the whole time, because this is a Rafale F3R with a couple of paveway 2s. This is probably the bomber that kept lobbing bombs at the infantry here, just flying out from Cheriton. Unfortunately, I was able to take out Kekfest's SU, what was it, 35, I think? Yep, SU-35S has been destroyed. And the Rafale survived without seemingly having taken any damage. And thanks to that aircraft kill, Riptator Chip is once again at 1655 versus Kekfest 1420. Now he still has about 20 minutes left to try and field something else here, to try and do some more damage. And Riptator Chip is just farming some more AA here. This is not the first tornado that came in. And in case you're wondering how the hell does he have that many seed aircraft? Well, the amount of seed aircraft that you can get in a deck has been heavily boosted. Normally you can get one tornado ECR in a deck. That is one per card. This time around, not so much. This time around you can get, I believe, 5 tornado ECRs for one card. And of course that also has to do with the fact that some artillery units, I'm not so sure, yeah, I think he already took out the Iskander. Yeah. This thing got taken out by seed. Artillery is now locatable by seed aircraft. And as such, you might think, well, 5 seed aircraft is a bit much. Maybe. But not if you can get them for one card, and not if you can take out enemy artillery with it. And keep in mind it's not all the artillery, it's most of the artillery. Smaller stuff like mortars don't really use any sort of radio communication which can be intercepted. At least that's what I believe is the thinking behind it. And as such, your mortars will be safe. Other units, such as the Iskander that I showed you a minute ago, not so much. That is pretty easy pickings for a seed aircraft. Unless you turn off the weapon. In that case, it'll be safe. Now, it seems like Riptator Chip has either once again run out of infantry or he's building up something. And in the meanwhile, he has definitely spent his fair share on enemy aircraft or on his own airfields. And he just keeps bombing more and more infantry. And while I initially said that the book M1-2 can cover the whole of the map from this point, yes they can. But the problem is, the missile isn't fast enough to catch the aircraft before the aircraft evacs. So while it does have the range to shoot down stuff over Cheriton, if an aircraft just comes in and drops a couple of bombs over here, then you really don't have time for the missile to fly all the way from there to Cheriton before the aircraft escapes. And it seems that at this point Kekfest is pretty fed up with the amount of enemy aircraft dropping munitions on his pretty pricey infantry. That he's moving up his AA platforms and well, taking a bit of a risk here with an active book. Especially considering the high amount of siege aircraft that we've seen so far. This is pretty risky play. At shorter range he also has a couple of Tunguskas. This Tunguska especially might not be able to get a good line of sight. Because these buildings might be getting in the way. It really depends on the angle that the aircraft comes into. Also, the Tunguska is no longer locatable. Oh, what do we have here? Another NH-90. Oh, really? Tunguska is no longer locatable. They are no longer radar guided, but that does not take away from their accuracy. 50% accuracy on the main gun, 50% accuracy on the Tunguska missile, and between those two platforms and good range, you have a pretty good shot at taking out enemy aircraft, or at least stunning them for long enough, so that the Seed or that the Book is capable of engaging them. At this point he also has a large amount of these Su-35Ss. Now, a quick stat overview. These things are 165 points, so this is quite the investment in aircraft here, just these two. And then one MiG-31BM for long-range fire support. 14,000 kilometer range on the missile. Fire and forget. These things also fire and forget, also 14,000, and a couple of 10,000 meter missiles, or 10,500. All fire and forget. Once again, however, do you have enough time to take down the aircraft? And the answer seems to be no. That Rafale was able to outrun those missiles for long enough so that they were not able to hit anything. And because of that, the Rafale once again makes it out alive. I think the Book at the moment hasn't fired or has already been resupplied by those Kamas. And we also see some more armor coming this way, but once again, that looks an awful lot like a glide bomb. And once again, it kills off another infantry group. The Patur Cornet now is dead. As you may have been seeing on the minimap, however, we have another group moving off to the side here. A bunch of BTR-80s. It seems that this forest is just about as well defended as Dmitry. There's nothing there. And that opens up some very nice opportunities to push into Gregory. Now he's still about 400 points behind, so he has once again lost some ground points-wise to Reptatorship. And attacking in destruction is usually more expensive than just defending. Defending, simple. You hold your terrain. You make sure you have a good blend of units to take down both air targets, ground targets, infantry. And you are most of the time able to deal more damage to them than they are to you, at least until your unit goes down, or the enemy has a very good grasp of combined arms. At this point, however, he has been defending Reptatorship. Kekfest has mostly been on the offensive here in Fedor, as well as Dmitry, and he's now preparing another offensive on the right, which, there goes another nice kill, 105 points. Which could allow him to get a few more points, but if Gregory's heavily defended, that might not go down as well as he's hoping. So for now the BTR-80s are coming through the woods here, and if they can push up along this particular road, they might have a straight line into Gregory, which can still be defended a little bit from this side, where I expect some more infantry to be. But other than that, you still have a lot of infantry, and the BTR-80s are fast enough not to have to stick to the road. The BTR-80s have a ground speed of a 90, road speed 150 of course, since they're wheeled vehicles. So the infantry could be pushing up here, with the BTRs coming in from the side, and again putting more pressure onto the structures. Let's see where this goes. I'm going to speed it up a little bit, because there's not too much going on. Now I think what we're seeing here is a case of over-investing in aircraft. And yes, the aircraft from Dictatorship so far have done a lot of damage to both the AA platforms as well as the infantry here. But other than that, he is not quite able to hold enough terrain. And he hasn't been capturing Fedor and or Dmitry, meaning that he is still stuck with a +5 in income. And of course, whatever else base income you have. Whereas Kekfest has a +3, +2, so that's a +5, +7, +11, and he's about to get a +15. That is a very large income discrepancy here. Once again, the Rafale Scalp comes in, drops the glide bomb from a range of 7,000 meters, immediately orders an evac, and before any missile is capable of intercepting the aircraft, it already left the area. Those things are very hard to kill. Now, thanks to the heavy tag, the Morskaya once again are able to survive a munition drop like that. Sure, they lost half their squad, but in the standard wargame, without the heavy tag, these guys would already be dead. Now, as expected, there is a smaller group of Gebirgsjäger over here, and they have some heavier armor coming in. Also, the armor from Red 4 is ready to go, but I'm not sure if a T-64 BM2 can really stand up to a Leopard 2 130. A Leopard 2 130, if I'm not mistaken, has 27 points of AP. That... really? Yep, here comes another aircraft. So on an infantry heavy map, you go aircraft. No, yeah, whatever. Anyway, another book bites the dust, and as I was saying, the Leopard 2 130 could do a lot of damage to this T-64. It won't probably outshot it or one-shot it, but it's definitely going to do a lot of damage. Now he keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. At this point, he's still about 300, almost 400 points behind Blue 4. There is the 130. Yep, 27 AP on the gun. This thing is going to deal a large amount of damage. Let's see what it fires at. There we go. Did you see that? This thing has 24 points of strength, 17 frontal armor. I think that this shot might have gone through the side, although I cannot be too sure. Let's be generous and say it went through the side. That means that the round had to go through 9 points of armor, and then took out pretty much 80% of the hit points on this vehicle. That's one shot from the Leopard 2 130. Very, very dangerous tank. At the same time, the Leopard 130 has 23 points of frontal armor, whereas, can we still find another one in time? This thing only has 22 points of armor penetration, meaning that it is not quite capable of dealing enough damage. Now, interestingly, Dictatorship is gaining a lot of points, because Kekfest's offensive is really, look at that, a double kill. It's not really going too well. He's still 400 points behind. But at this point, I think that Dictatorship surrendered. Not sure why. Yes, he was being driven back, but he was definitely getting some points and a good amount of kills. And I'm not sure how much infantry Kekfest still had left. So he surrendered, at least that's what I'm thinking happened, or he somehow disconnected. And while he had more points, this caused defeat. Now look at the difference in command points. 2650 versus 5291. That is a very large difference. And this is all the difference that, or this made all the difference in the amount of infantry, support platforms, AA that Kekfest was able to bring in. So never underestimate the importance of capturing zones, because this is where that leads to. Now let's have a look at the units' kills and losses. Ka-52 took out a couple of vehicles early on. I believe the Ka-52 may have survived. The Sturmovie took out some of the pioneers early on, and I don't think that we're going to be seeing any infantry units with or particularly long kill lists, because most of the infantry, I think, did not make it out of the battle alive. Most of them early on, or at least throughout the battle, got taken out by particular aircraft, such as the one with the glide bombs, such as the Mark 84 JDAMs. Lots of firepower, very dangerous, but by investing so much in aircraft, what's his name again? Reptator really didn't have enough points left for ground forces. And that compounded with his mistake of not capturing enough terrain. Now look at these Morskayas go. Vabs, Grotals, and a whole bunch of further Vabs. Nice amount of kills there for them. K-52 took out a AH-2 Tiger, as well as some of these N90H, or NH90. I wonder what came out of these things. What did they drop off? It might have been Commando Marines or Fallschirmjäger. That's really the only things that I could imagine came out of those NH90s. As for losses, just look how often you can see aircraft here. Rafale Scalp. He actually called in 2 of these. One of them may have died early on. The second one, De Forge, killed off Rozvedka, Spetsnaz Heavy. There's another Eurofighter taking out further Misha. Look at these Commander Marines. Holy shit. Took out all sorts of vehicles. Verba, Bulats, Infantry, Skrejet. Jesus. Now this is another problem that Reptator might have had in his deck. He had too many expensive infantry units. And because of that, every infantry unit was at least a 30-point investment. And that's not even counting the transport that they were using. So I wouldn't be surprised if one infantry squad cost him something in the region of 40-45 points, depending on the type of infantry that he was using. And because of that, all those points had to be making their own value in return, or he was going to be fighting a losing battle, and he just couldn't resupply them fast enough. Whereas Red 4 infantry, sure, it was definitely expensive. Mishas as well as Spetsnaz, they were expensive, but generally not as expensive as an infantry squad such as Commander Marines or Fallschirmjäger. Anyway, that's it for this replay. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. And again, I'm just going to repeat it to make sure that everybody gets it, if they made it to this point of the video. This is Ash and Shadows. This is a free mod that you can get for Wargame Red Dragon. You can download it through the link in the description. I will not be providing any tech support on that, but there is a Discord that does exactly that, where you can also link up with other players who have this mod. Make sure you have the same version as your friends if you're playing this with them. Otherwise, there's a very good chance that you're going to be getting a desync. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you soon for more videos.